All right, cool guys, we are up. Welcome to another edition of Fox 5 Live here in the DC newsroom. How are you guys? Welcome to the show. It's Thursday, November 2nd. I'm super excited to be here with you with Mike Fishoff, one of our photographers, photojournalists, giving us a little insight into his day today. I went to grab him before he went out for his story. First off, we gotta note this. You have the new Christmas cup from Starbucks. Have you guys, anybody gotten these yet? This is interesting though, because this was a story I remember last year. There was kind of the continued would-be possible controversy with Starbucks cups, and this one seems to be pretty neutral. You want to show it off? Yeah, there you go. So this one is more of like a coloring book effect, right? You color it in.
That, and it kind of looks like it recognizes Christmas a little more, maybe with the gifts and snowflakes.
There's a doves.
There's some peace doves. Whoops.
Peace doves, that one. Yeah.
There we go, peace doves.
Training to do your
I'm training, yeah, I'm a learning photog.
But anyway, I thought it was cute, and it's nice that you're here to kind of showcase it for us.
There
Vanna
you go.
White, thank you. Tell me really quickly, because I never get to grab you, you're always running off. Today you're going out with Tom Fitzgerald, who is also here. I think he's working on some of the tax reform stuff, that story. And actually, speaking of that, we have a live feed coming in from the press conference, but we're not going to actually play it right now because I want to get Mike's thoughts and just on like what you're going to be doing today. What are you up to today?
Whatever the giant tax announcement is.
Yep.
Done. They're having quite a few press conferences about it today, but no more speculation. We'll find out exactly what's in it.
Yeah.
How much of my own money I get to keep.
There you go.
That's right.
Pull it back to you.
My money. It's about me. TV's about me.
This guy.
No, not me.
We also, guys, will have an update from, just played out actually a couple minutes ago, Mayor Bill de Blasio in New York provided some updates on the terror attack that we've been talking about this week, so we're going to play that for you. Also, we can't neglect this. Last night was Game 7 of the World Series. Did you watch?
I did. I watched some of it, and then once the Astros
took
the lead.
Big time.
But good for them. Isn't that right? That's the first World Series the Astros won?
Yeah. There were people from Houston tweeting about it. Chris Paul was tweeting about it.
That's nice. That's a good thing. I like to root for the National League, which is not a Maryland thing to do.
Because you're from here?
Well, I grew up here, but, you know, your favorite baseball team's always the one that your grandpa took you to see. And that was the Cincinnati Reds. And
cool.
Been a Reds fan, and Pete Rose will be in the Hall of Fame someday.
Bummer about
Everybody
the Reds,
gambles,
though.
Come on.
Bummer.
Yeah. Oh, the Reds, bummer.
But guys, this is a live look at Dodger Stadium there for you. So we have that camera there. And pretty much we're going to be mixing it up today, as always, jumping around to different live shots and live sources. Like I said, an update on the terror attack. We'll get a little social insight from Rice. She'll come over and give us a little rundown on what we're working on for social media. What else is happening? Oh, this is really cool. There's an Eisenhower memorial, and the groundbreaking, it was today here in D.C.
Finally, how long did it take to get
basically,
done?
after years of public controversy and debate is what they're saying. The work is finally beginning today. It's a massive memorial to President Dwight Eisenhower in D.C. on Independence and 4th Southwest. If you're familiar with the DMV area, in the quadrants, it's down there in Southwest. So that'll be neat to check out.
That's a chunk.
Yeah. It'll be, let's see, there was a ceremony, so we're going to play some of that. Kind of cool to hear from some of those people. It's going to be columns and statues, obviously dedicated to the military commander in World War II. And yeah, I'm just kind of reading in a little more about it.
You're definitely running out of room for memorials or monuments around D.C.
There's a lot of them, that's for sure.
So,
a great place to visit and to see them. And it never really gets old. I think there's still some that I want to re-see or, see.
Library of
first.
Congress is
Yeah.
awesome. If anybody's never seen it, it's probably one of the
beautiful.
most beautiful buildings on the inside in all of DC.
It really is beautiful.
Don't skip that if you come to DC.
Yeah, I know we have some of you.
Trip.
Some of you guys are from the area. If you're on regularly, some of you might be watching from afar, but welcome, and let us know who you are and where you're watching from, because we always want to chat with you and get some questions too. But I wanted to have Mike and kind of give us a little recap of what he's going to be up to today. But it sounds like you're going out to do some politics.
Yeah, do politics with Fitz. That's usually with him. And
got your Starbucks ready to go.
Starbucks ready to go.
Always.
Yep. Take some sound bites maybe from one of these press conferences, and then go get
There you go.
an expert.
And then you do some editing later.
Do some editing later, and then
Put together
a
a
shot later today.
Good.
So,
Working in tandem with our own Fitzgerald, who you guys see sometimes on the stream. So I see right now Steve Scalise is up. He's talking as part of this tax reform presser. So maybe we'll jump over there and just kind of jump in so you can have a live look at what they're talking about with this reform. And yeah, House Republicans. Should we jump over there? I guess we will.
Yeah, pop it up.
All right, guys, we're going over.
See what Steve has to say.
To have their piece of the American dream. Now I'd like to turn it over to Peter Roscom, who's been a leader on the Ways and Means Committee at helping make sure we can simplify this tax code so much that you can actually fill out, over 90% of Americans will be able to fill out their taxes on a postcard. That's what simplicity means, not only having more money in your pocket, but being able to do this. Peter Roscom. Here, I'll leave that there for you.
Keep the postcard. Well, thank you, Mr. Whip. You notice that the children were becoming impatient with tax reform. They walked out a couple of minutes ago. She's become a table pounder. Say, get me this action right now. Look, what we're going after is we're directly attacking the status quo. The status quo of the tax code, the status quo of the Internal Revenue Code is the problem. It's the few that benefit under the status quo. And it's everybody else that basically feels crushed by this and overwhelmed by this, and we act as if historically this is a natural disaster that we can't do anything about. It's not a natural disaster. The Internal Revenue Code is a statute. It was created by Congress, and it can be changed by Congress. And what you sense right now, the optimism here on this podium, the sense of forward-lookingness across the American public is people are longing for something that gives them relief. They're longing for something that will bring back sort of the competitive nature. Look, there's two views of the economy that are competing for the affections of the American people right now. One view is wrong. It's the zero-sum game view of the economy. It says if somebody is successful, that comes at someone else's demise. We reject that wholeheartedly. The other view says, no. When people are successful, it inures a benefit to everybody. Now, we're sensitive to making sure everyone can participate, and that at its structure, these changes that we're proposing are transformational for everyone. So I think what we need to do now is to be diligent, to be convincing, to be invitational, and recognize that opportunities like this are few and far between. And so I want to thank our speaker and our leadership team, and Chairman Brady especially, for being tenacious and being willing to listen to changes and to hear criticisms and critiques, but ultimately to be incredibly disciplined and persevering to make sure that we have the opportunity to determine our future.
First, I got to say, these kids are behaving better than my kids do at church, so fantastic job, guys. Any questions? Kevin, come on up here. Yeah.
And standing up to the swamp people. But it seems like you guys worked hard last night to make sure that you can make the corporate rate reduction permanent, while parts of the individual code and family credit are temporary. How do you square those two?
So we are focused on increasing paychecks in a major way. And we know the families who struggle the most have seen their paychecks leave for other countries. So we drove toward a 20% rate so our local businesses can compete and win anywhere in the world, especially here at home, so they can compete and create jobs, compete against China, Europe, Canada, and Mexico and create jobs here in America as well. It was critically important the rest of the world understand we're not going to be the doormat any longer. We're not going to stand still for 30 years as they leave us in the dust. We're going to compete and we're going to win, and our jobs and paychecks for the middle class families are going to grow. And so permanence for businesses, permanence for families matter. We did create in this new family credit, which I think you ought to take a close look at. I look at our neighbors, not only getting more help with their child, getting more help for themselves, and that college kid, and I've got one at home, or that parent coming back to live. And the most important thing about that family credit, it doubles the amount of Americans who can finally get help with their kids. This is a family-friendly tax code. And so I'm very excited about what this brings middle-class Americans, and I think permanence and certainty drives that growth.
Drucker.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Can you talk about the political will for Republicans to compromise among themselves as this moves forward compared to what we saw with the health care bill, even though you did ultimately pass that? It was a bit messier. And secondarily, for years, you and other Republicans have argued that all Americans that pay taxes and work should get a tax cut. But with some of the elements of this bill and where your rhetorical focus today, it's clearly on people in a certain position on the income scale. And it's steered away from the sort of argument you had with Democrats over the past 10 to 20 years, and certainly under Obama. Can you talk about that?
So first off, the political will is strong, and you can see it right here. We have not reformed the tax code since 1986. The world is passing this country by, and we're losing jobs and companies as a result of it. So the political will among the members here in the House, as shown by the members of the Ways and Means Committee, is ironclad to get this done, because if we don't do this, we will not get the kind of economic potential that we know we can reach. And the fact that people are living paycheck to paycheck in this country, about half of people are living that, they need a break. So yes, the focus is on middle class tax relief. The focus is on directing that tax relief to the people in the middle and the people who are trying to get there, and that is why we put our emphasis on that tax relief for those people who are in the middle, who are working paycheck to paycheck, striving to get ahead. And what Kevin just said, we've got to modernize our tax code so that we can be competitive again, so that we can keep jobs in this country, so we can keep businesses in this country. We have seen a flurry of U.S. companies moving overseas and becoming foreign companies. That will only increase if we stay at the back of the pack. That is why we have to work quickly to fix our tax system, clean it up, level the playing field, make it more fair, so that we can get bigger paychecks, more jobs, and keep businesses in America and get businesses coming back home. We're the only country that says to a business, if you make money overseas, keep it there, because our tax laws basically don't let you bring it back. So this levels the playing field and gets that money back into our country to invest in our jobs here. That's going to help paychecks, that's going to help competitiveness, and that is why Republicans are absolutely committed to doing this. Yeah.
The Bush tax cuts did not result in growth or higher wages or more jobs. Why are you so certain that this will be different?
So first, can I just comment, did the speaker just sound like a former chairman of the Ways and Means Committee?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. I know, you were getting ramped up.
Just getting going.
So the question was what?
Our last experiment with tax cuts didn't lead to growth or higher wages or more jobs. In fact, quite the opposite. So why are you?
So this is a complete redesign of the code, so we can simplify it so much that 9 out of 10 Americans can file using a postcard style system, lowering the rates, protecting more of the first dollars you earn, making sure you have strong middle class relief. But it's more than that. We're not just putting higher octane fuel in an old clunker of a tax car. We propose to drive a newer tax car that can compete and win against any country in the world. So that redesign for simplicity, fairness, and competitiveness, I predict under this tax reform plan, America will vault from 31st in the world among our competitors to the top 3 as the best places on the planet for that next new job, that next new manufacturing plant, that next new research headquarters. That's what's different.
Casey.
Sneak a second question in there if you'll. I got this kind of your forbearance, but if Republicans can't get this done, Do you deserve to control the Congress?
What's your second question? We're going to get this done. You know why? Because the American people are counting on us. We're going to get this done because we told the American people this is what we're going to do if we get this majority. And guess what? We're doing it. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. That's your
Exciting stuff. We don't have a choice. And it's a great thing. I've been in business for 40 years. This is good. This is good for jobs. So I'm excited. You know, the thing is, I've been on Ways and Means 7 years in Dave Camp. We worked so hard for so long, and we never got caught.
But I think all of that work informed us to make this better.
Yeah.
All of the hearings that we had.
That's why I was thinking last night, I couldn't even sleep. I'm so excited because I think for 5 years. It's not easy. 7 years.
All right, guys, we're back. We're going to pull out of that press conference, and I'm back with Raisa, who is not listening to me. She's coloring.
I'm channeling my inner
She's
Picasso.
legit coloring the thing that we introduced earlier, which Mike Bischoff left for us. The
I
Starbucks
had
cup.
him chug his coffee because I was like, Mike, I need your cup now.
Funny thing, he always gets a flat white, and I
really?
love them. They're really good. He gets like an extra shot and the flat white grande.
An extra shot or 2 extra shots?
He gets, I want to say 1.
Isn't it called the zombie or something like that? Because I swore he told me one time, he's like, when I really need a pickup, I need the zombie, which is like 3 extra shots. I'm coloring a cup.
Yeah, we're just showing our people the new Starbucks.
Aren't I doing great? I'm
no,
staying
because we're
in
back
the
with Raisa,
lines.
who's our social media editor, to kind of chat some of the social stuff of the day and kind of what's going on. The coolest thing is, I got to start with this, because you guys remember, if you were on yesterday, we talked about how, just kind of what we were contributing to digital that day for social media, and kind of how a feel-good story that we were going to put out there. Turns out, and this is an amazing story, it proves the connection that we have with our digital platforms and our TV broadcast, right? And there was the story about the chef helping
the Puerto
in Puerto
Rican
Rico.
chefs. Yes, so we have the Merry Men of DC, Puerto Rican chefs who are putting their creative skills to work by flying out to Puerto Rico to help Hurricane Maria victims that have yet to receive help. So what they're doing is basically gathering their supplies, trying to procure funds to be able to fly out there and hit 3 specific zoning areas that really, really need their help. And I find it amazing that, number one, we found the story on Instagram. They reached out, and we were on the verge of creating something for web, but crazy how life works out.
I know.
We were able to incorporate them in the 5 p.m. news. So we actually were able to send out Gary McGrady to be able to interview 2 of the chefs that are going to be flying out there, in addition to the one who started it all. So Chef Sammy
from Republic. From Republic in Tacoma Park, local restaurant up in Tacoma. But the coolest thing about this is that, Raisa, you were just kind of chatting about it over at the digital kind of table.
Yeah.
And one of our reporters kind of was looking to see what he was going to cover for the day. And it sort of like just colluded, and
it all
became a
worked
story.
out. It became a story, and now they have on-air time. They have a web story that we were able to push out.
Right.
If you guys are interested in helping out, visit it, look up DC Chefs, travel to Puerto Rico. You'll be able to find all the GoFundMe information and link
and the web story right there.
Web story, exactly.
So cool.
So it's really awesome how sometimes we're able to incorporate these social media finds with broadcasts. So hopefully this helps them out, and I just appreciate the work that they're doing. You know,
It's
so
all
selfless.
Yeah,
kind.
it's really cool.
Yeah.
It's all connected. I know people are still trying not to move on from these disasters because they're still very heavy in a lot of people's hearts.
Absolutely.
Of course, like Puerto Rico, Mexico still, Houston. I mean, the whole year was really ridden with so many disasters.
Oh my gosh, it's been horrible.
Yeah, so you've had a lot of posts on that and just stuff.
Did. Yeah, we did. The digital team was all over it. And an interesting fact here, because Gary pointed it out, about only 35% of the island has working electricity. So that is a large chunk of the island that has yet to have. Exactly.
No, it's definitely something not
and
to
this is 2
forget.
months basically after.
Yeah,
right?
isn't it?
I think so. It's
yeah,
sad.
yeah, totally.
But, like seriously, shout out to everybody who's been able to put forth, you know, a little bit of their part, whether it be financially or physically, you know, help these people, whether it be in Houston, Mexico, Puerto Rico, or all these other places that were, you know, struck with these natural disasters. So
yeah, definitely.
I find it amazing.
Yeah, and then other than that, what else are you guys kind of focusing on in social today? Anything
Well, we did
animal
post a cute little story on an unlikely friendship between a husky and a duck. So
we're not beyond the animal videos yet, right?
No, I have a soft spot
People
for
still
animals.
love them. I mean, we draw in the stuff. We want to keep it kind of varied. Yeah, guys. So obviously a lot of politics still today. We played out the end of that press conference with Paul Ryan and some other House members of the Ways and Means Committee talking about tax reform. We have the Eisenhower Memorial, which is really cool. They had a groundbreaking ceremony this morning, and if you didn't get to see it, which we had one of our photogs there to record it, so we're gonna play that out, which is neat. And then of course any updates on the New York terror attack, which is still the interesting news that came out from that. And I don't know if you guys have heard this or read it, but the suspect in that terror attack, 29 years old, in the hospital, according to reports, wanted to display the ISIS flag. President Trump has been tweeting about it. President Trump has been calling for the death penalty for him. There's just been a lot of stuff coming out of this, because this is an instance where this terrorist did not end up killing himself or blowing himself up, and instead mowed down people, looking for as much destruction as he could get on Halloween night, where he thought people would be out and about, and they were, but obviously I think it could have done even worse damage, but it's still really, really bad and really heavy on everyone's hearts. So we'll be continuing to break in with any updates on that. Awesome. That's just a crazy story, and you're following that for social too. Was there a post even about the cop, the police man who was involved in that? Didn't we do one? Or New York might have?
Memory's a little hazy there, but I do think that our Fox sister station New York posted about an officer who was basically
he's getting a lot of it. So the accolades. Well, let me find it. I thought they did.
I think maybe they didn't.
Too. Fox 7 New York, I can't find it.
No. Okay.
But there was, I saw it on one of our sister stations.
I think it was New York, because they've been all over it. Their team is amazing.
I'm trying to see if it's Atlanta. I mean, people, I don't know. We'll find it. Oh, there. Wait.
Let me check their Insta real quick.
Yeah, so someone had a headshot of the policeman who is being hailed a hero in that instance, and just a little gratitude post to him. But yeah, that's definitely something that we can't forget, and we're going to continue to watch it. And then other than that, kind of just seeing what people are up to in the newsroom. It's a little more bustling today. What is it, Thursday? So
it's Thursday. We're kind of winding down, but not really. But we're there. It's like, am I there? Yeah.
Yeah, and we're here to kind of bring you the latest and the breaking stuff, so you can kind of check into what's happening. This is really interesting, and possibly you came on the stream for this. Obviously, the headline: the Nationals are announcing their new manager today officially. We've been hearing about it. Dave, they say they want him to be called Davey. Martinez is going to be announced in a formal press conference. We have Brody, our sports guy, going over there.
Oh, nice.
And so we'll have a live camera there. We're going to try to get that back and show that to you live, so you can kind of see the announcement officially, especially if you're from the area and you're a Nats fan. So we'll try to stream that. Yeah. That's a cool little sports thing.
Yeah, I think so too.
That'll be in the noon kind of time, noonish. I guess it's noon now, so it'll be in about an hour, about
probably
1.
coming up soon. I think they're there now,
They're
right?
getting ready.
No,
this is Dodgers.
Dodgers
it's just a bump from LA.
Okay.
So for Game 7 last night, did you watch it at all?
No, I didn't. No, we didn't get a chance to watch it. Oh my gosh, late night. I swear sometimes
games.
kind of fighting traffic. You go home and you unwind, and it's like, like we've mentioned before, working in the news industry, broadcast industry. It's like
be in any.
We're in it from like a 9 to 5 perspective, and then we get out, and it's like, let's unwind. Let's just
and then
take
you're
it
still
down.
Getting these tweets, or you see what's breaking, so you're never really out of it.
Exactly.
But
because you're still, on your phone, scrolling through.
And digital, especially for news junkies.
Exactly.
Anybody that's interested. So I even saw this New York thing break when I was off, and I was just like, now I'm seeing these tweets. So there's that. But what was I going to say? I forgot. I know I lost my train of thought of what's happening.
It happens.
I know. I still haven't been able to watch Stranger Things too. I know. In the entertainment world.
It came out
like
a month ago.
Anybody's seen it
now.
or has any thoughts, don't give me any spoilers. But I haven't been able to binge watch as everyone's doing, just because we're watching constant TV and stuff. So I will get to it. My goal is have a nice meet-in this weekend.
The weather is perfect for it, because it's nice and crisp, makes you just want to stay home,
crisp.
cuddle up.
I hear, interestingly, it's going to be I think in the 70s and 80s the next couple of days, randomly hot and then back to cold, I think.
Okay.
So maybe this weekend is perfect for me to binge watch.
No, but if it's going to be beautiful.
Well, just the next couple of days. And then I think the weekend, we'll have that sucker.
Okay.
Is Mike here? No.
One of the weather peeps.
We haven't had the weather guys on in a little bit, but hopefully, oh yeah, they're over there. Tucker's over
they're there. Okay.
They're hiding in their corner. So yeah, I'll be back with my review of that. You've watched it all.
I've watched it all, so I'm waiting for her.
It's so
to,
viral
like,
and
tell me how
trending.
she
I know, and I
feels.
hate to be behind, right, and not part of like the loop of everybody watching it. So anyway, we'll be back with that.
And Thor's coming out this weekend.
Oh,
kind of
cool.
ahead. I'm going Saturday.
You are?
Like
Love
superhero
it.
fans out here. I love it.
So many interesting movies coming out. Kevin has the scoop. He is over, Kevin McCarthy, our entertainment reporter, is over in London right now for the
So
premiere
cool.
of Murder on the Orient Express, the acclaimed Agatha Christie novel made into a movie, which I'm super excited for. I remember reading that as a
Did you read it?
teenager.
I didn't.
Did you? You
no,
didn't?
I didn't. But I would always like pass by it. Like,
It's
I'm
so
gonna get to it, but I
famous.
never
It
did.
was. I was really into mystery as a kid, and I don't even think I read it for school. I read it on my own accord. I
So
think.
you know who did it.
I loved it. Yeah, I got to go back now and think, but
Okay,
I
don't
remember
tell me.
it was yeah, and now I'm trying to think if I think I remember the plot. She always had an interesting twist, and it's a really, really cool mystery, and there was a twist at the end.
Okay.
And I bet you the movie will be so well done. Johnny Depp's in it.
I love
It's
him.
gonna
I'm a
be
huge fan of Johnny Depp.
so good.
Absolutely. I feel like any role he plays.
And I'm so excited to see Kevin. So Kevin's over there. He works so hard. He's always running around. He's tweeting it out. He's Instagramming out like what it's like on the red carpet. He's
He
always
is
about
so
it. So I'm gonna
good.
watch his Instas.
Yeah, for sure.
To check it out.
His reviews are generally like right on point. Everything he said about Stranger Things, I completely agree
about
with.
the turning points.
With his movie reviews, and he's just a phenomenal and super emotional and super passionate about what he does, and that's what I enjoy about him.
He works so hard.
He
and
works so freaking hard.
I love it. We're like totally pumping up Kevin. He's always like, tweet at me what you thought of XYZ. Like, let me know so I can like get your reaction, engage with you. He's super engaged. That's why he's perfect for the engagement, the digital engagement.
Absolutely.
We rarely get him on here because he's always on the go or he's doing early morning hits.
On the hustle and
but
bustle, for sure.
he's around. But he's in London now, so we'll get that report through his digital tweets and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, like you said, Thor's coming out. A lot of good movies down the pipeline. The Dahmer movie, the serial killer that we were just talking about.
Yes, that one.
You know a little bit about that. You're into sort of those thriller.
Yeah, to the thriller,
things.
psychological / murdery movies. I mean, I think they're amazing. The shows. We were talking about Mindhunter also. I
Haven't
think
seen it yet,
getting to
Netflix.
the psyche is just amazing. Just getting an understanding for this different type of world, if you so will, is I find it fascinating. I think in another life, I probably could have been a psychologist that worked in a ward.
Wow.
It just fascinates me. I don't know what. But yeah, that's coming out soon. What else? Star Wars fans.
Oh yeah, the
mean,
trailer drops.
December, that's coming up. I got my tickets already for that because, kid you not, Thursday
Actually,
and
you're right.
Friday
It's going to be
kind of
crazy.
sold out
So you bought it
already.
for DC or Virginia? Or?
Virginia.
Yeah.
So I'll be actually traveling out of my way to go to another theater I have yet to go to because the nearby ones are sold out Thursday and Friday. So it's like, okay, Saturday, I had to venture out like, I think 40 minutes down to Herndon, from Alexandria to Herndon.
You
so,
already booked it.
Yeah, I'm a fan.
And that'll be, when does it drop though?
The 16th of December, if I'm not mistaken.
So way
if not
down the
14th.
road.
Yeah, but they're already
Interesting.
like releasing tickets, which I find interesting.
Yeah, you're right for the hot ticket ones. You know, Kevin was even saying for Dunkirk, I got them early.
That's so good.
That's gonna definitely Academy Award nominations for sure. I'm
That's
excited
still
to
in
see
theaters
that.
around my way.
Is it?
How interesting is that?
Huh.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited for all that when Kevin reports on the Oscar nominations. That'll be fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be
When that
great.
comes. It's so fun. Such a fun season. So that's entertainment, guys. A little bit of social media news. I guess we'll let Raisa go back to your stuff
Yeah,
for the
we'll get
day.
to posting more on animals on Instagram.
I
Just
know.
kidding, guys.
Thanks for hanging out with us,
Yeah,
guys. And if you're new to the
thanks for
stream, welcome. We are just live in the digital studio here at Fox 5 in DC. So we're going to play a really cool ceremony, a groundbreaking for the Dwight D. Eisenhower Memorial that's coming to DC. They broke ground today, finally, after a long, kind of awaited period, I guess legal issues on getting it done, and then they finally did it today. So we're going to check into that ceremony now, and then we'll be back with you in the newsroom. Thanks for watching, guys. Let's check in.
Want to finish coloring my cup?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, providing our invocation this morning is Father Leo Blasey of Hays, Kansas.
O good and gracious God, through the long sweep of time and within the vastness of the universe, we find ourselves in this present moment and in this particular place. And it is here that we acknowledge you and we praise you In your infinite wisdom, you have guided those who came before us in good times as well as bad. You have moved this nation in times of peace and when distrust between peoples erupted in war. By their perseverance, we continue to know of your mercy and grace. We now implore you to continue to direct your works and to order our lives, that they may be dedicated to you and to praise your glory. We are privileged to come together today in this happy occasion. We ask you to bless our endeavors to work for the work that has begun and the structures that are to be set in place. Throughout history, nations and empires have built shrines and temples to deify their great leaders, to ask them to reward their worship. In this great land, we build monuments as memorials to shining examples of service to the country and to its people. You have blessed this nation with many such examples, and a number of these people have served in the military, and others have served in this nation's highest office as president. Many have done both, and 3 have held the highest rank in the military and the office of presidency: Washington, Grant, and Eisenhower. This great country has seen so many blessings and so much prosperity, yet we have so often fallen short of the potential that you have given to us. Still, we are a nation of peoples who have always come together in a time of need. We have most recently experienced this cohesive response to natural disasters that have affected so many of our communities, whether hurricanes, fires, or floods. We ask you, Lord, that this facility might always be a reminder of what it means to be American, that all who visit here may understand the true meaning of sacrifice and selfless service to our nation and to our neighbor. Finally, Lord, we ask you to be with us, to lift us up on our journey to our eternal home. Help us always to be one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming to the stage Greta Van Susteren.
Good morning, and please be seated. Welcome to this very special and long-awaited event, the groundbreaking for the memorial honoring President Dwight D. Eisenhower. We're gathered today to honor a remarkable man who left our nation a unique legacy. As our 34th president, he was the most recent and probably the last general to become president of the United States. During World War II, he served as Supreme Allied Commander, the brilliant military strategist who defeated the Nazis and led the Allies to victory in Europe. After the war, as NATO commander, he created new strategies to deter communism. As president, he served as commander-in-chief in the struggle against communism, becoming the leader of the free world. He took strong stands to ensure equality and opportunity for Americans of all races, genders, and creeds. And of course, his vision for an America on the move gave us the federal highway system and the FAA. In fact, many of the government agencies that came into being during President Eisenhower's presidency, the Department of Health, Education, Welfare, now the Departments of HHS and Education, the FAA, and NASA surround this site, which will from now on be known as Eisenhower Square. There are many, many people here today whom we want to recognize. They have played a role in making this very special day become a reality. We want to recognize Labor Secretary Alex Acosta, Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao, and Deputy Secretary of the Interior David Bernhardt. And from the House of Representatives, we're delighted to have with us several members from both sides of the aisle: Representative Marcy Kaptur, Representative Stephen Palazzo, Chairman Rob Bishop, Congressman Darrell Issa, Congressman Mike Gallagher, Congressman Mark Amadei, Congressman Craig Estes, Congressman Kevin Yoder, and Congresswoman Betty McCollum. And from the great state of Kansas, Ike's home, President Eisenhower's home, we're happy to welcome Governor Sam Brownback. And of course, it's our special honor to have with us several members of the diplomatic corps representing some of the countries allied with the United States during and after World War II. Ambassador Gerard Rowe from France, and from the Taipei Economic and Cultural Representative Office, Joseph Chang. Finally, we want to recognize Brigadier General Carl Riddell, the Executive Director of the Eisenhower Memorial Commission. The General and his team have worked tirelessly to ensure the vision of the memorial to Dwight David Eisenhower has become a reality, playing a significant role in making this day happen. So thank you to him and his team for all the hard work and the leadership. Today's first speaker, Congressman Mike Thompson. He's the Vice Chairman of the Eisenhower Memorial Commission. He represents the 5th District of California, which includes all of Napa and parts of Sonoma, Central, Contra Costa, Lake and Solano counties, and of course these areas recently tragically devastated by those wildfires. A Vietnam veteran, Congressman Thompson served as a platoon leader in Vietnam. A strong advocate of our nation's veterans, he co-chairs the Military Veterans Caucus and has been a strong advocate of the Eisenhower Memorial in Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Congressman Mike Thompson.
Thank you, Greta. It's a pleasure to be here today, and it's great to now be able to see the finish line of this incredible project. It's my honor to introduce you to some of the people who have helped make this happen. First, my fellow commissioners, Representative Stanford Bishop from Georgia, Representative Mike Simpson of Idaho, Representative Mac Thornberry of Texas, Senator Thad Cochran of Mississippi, Senator Gary Peters of Michigan, Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, and of course our great friend and leader, Chairman Pat Roberts of Kansas. With us today, we also have 2 presidential appointed commissioners, Susan Baines Harris and Alfred Gildolig. When a commission has been in business as long as this one, we have some commissioners who are either no longer serving or sadly no longer with us. I want to introduce 2 very special people whose husbands inspired this memorial many years ago. Irene Hirono Inoue and Kathy Stevens. Thank you for joining us. This is a special moment today for many of us, and we're honored to be joined by members of the Eisenhower family. Susan, Anne, Wolfgang, David, Merrill, Adriana, and Nicholas. We also have some impressive brass with us today. General P.X. Kelly, former Commandant of the Marine Corps and co-chair of the Advisory Committee. Representing the USS Eisenhower, Captain Craig Sikola. And Brigadier General Stephen Gilland, representing the United States Military Academy at West Point. Building a memorial takes a lot of resources. We have some great help in that area. I'd like to introduce former Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle, the co-chairman of the Finance Committee. We're very honored to have with us 4 World War II veterans, Floyd Rankin, David Levy, Elizabeth Ruth Morris, and John Showalter. Let's give them a big hand. It takes a team to move a project like this along. You've met our elected officials, the Eisenhower family, and the fundraisers, but the people with the real hard job are the ones who have to take the legacy of this great American and translate it into a memorial park in our nation's capital. We're fortunate to have the world-renowned Frank Gehry leading an incredible design team for this project. Frank, you and your team have created a masterpiece that will be visited by millions of Americans and visitors from around the world for centuries to come, and we're incredibly grateful. You have a fantastic team. The sculptor who's bringing President Eisenhower to life in bronze, Sergei Ivanbekov, the artist and engineer who will be creating a one-of-a-kind metal tapestry, also a fellow Californian, Thomas Osinski. And I ask the team from Gehry Partners to please stand, and their joint venture partner, IECOM. Please stand and give them a hand. Now, if you'll please turn your attention to the screen behind me for the video honoring Ike.
We must be ready to dare all for our country. For history does not long entrust the care of freedom to the weak or the timid. We must be willing, individually and as a nation, to accept whatever sacrifices may be required of us. A people that values its privileges above its principles soon loses both.
We have heroes in America. Lincoln, Washington. Look at the great statues and the monuments in Washington. And Dwight Eisenhower was a hero. He was a nonpartisan hero in America.
As a military leader, as the president, and as a citizen deeply dedicated to democracy, Dwight D. Eisenhower compiled a record of public service that has won him a unique place in the history of this country and the world in the 20th century. The Eisenhower Memorial will honor his legacy as the Supreme Commander of Allied forces in Europe during World War II and as the 34th President of the United States.
In order to do something, it has to have some gravitas. It has to be borderline a work of art of some kind. The story will be pretty powerful. We would use these blocks and carve the sayings into those, and so give it some dignity for a memorial to such a great man. I found a person who was never going to give up. He was a guy that made the world a different place for all of us, a better place.
Here was Eisenhower, who, after he left Kansas, was in the military his whole life, and then he led the D-Day invasion, came out a 5-star general, became president of Colombia, later went back as the first Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, our forces in Europe, and he was used to making big decisions. One thing I always liked about Eisenhower is he never tried to be too flowery. He always just explained his position, said, here's what I believe, here's what I'm going to do, and here's why. And it made a lot of sense to me.
I think he taught us that in this 21st century, as it was fundamentally in the 20th century, ultimately our security is provided by bridges. His entire career was the building of coalitions within the U.S. Army, within the Allied structure in the Second World War. And I would argue the absolute apotheosis of his ability to create bridges was the work he did in bringing NATO to life. And like all of us, I think, in the military today, we draw inspiration from General Eisenhower, who became President Eisenhower, but we cherish him for his role as an active duty officer in the military. He was extraordinary in so many different dimensions.
You look at that generation, you look at those men and those women that had fought in World War II and those that had given their life in Normandy and elsewhere for our generation. They're the generation that have lived those values that we aspire to today. Some very tough times and some very difficult circumstances. When leadership was needed the most, they answered the call of duty and they provided what our nation needed. They served their country not only to our national defense, but also as President Eisenhower did as President of the United States. They are the role models for our cadets today. They are the shoulders on who our cadets now stand.
President Eisenhower, Ike, embodied the values Midwesterners prize: determination and tenacity. When faced with a challenge, he stayed focused. When faced with adversity, he didn't stop. He never gave in. There's another Kansan who embodies those qualities, and without him, I'm not sure we would all be here today. As chairman of the Eisenhower Memorial Commission, Senator Pat Roberts has worked with unyielding focus, determination, and tenacity to ensure that this memorial to President Dwight D. Eisenhower, a fellow Kansan and a hero to millions across the globe, would become a reality. And today, of course, that reality begins. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a truly great American, the senator from Kansas, a senior senator from Kansas, Senator Pat Roberts.
I think I'm going to ask Greta to introduce me every time I get up to talk. Thank you, Greta, for that introduction, and thank you so much for your long-standing support for this project. You have been a true soldier in the Eisenhower Memorial Army in helping to get us here today. I know I speak for all gathered for this memorable event when I say it is great to be here today. First, let us reflect for a moment about a few members of the greatest generation who brought us to this place today: Ted Stevens and Danny Inouye, two giants in the Senate who authored the legislation to create the Eisenhower Memorial. When Ted and Danny started us down this path, it was both an honor and privilege for me, a new senator from Kansas, to be asked to help memorialize our most famous Kansan, Dwight David Eisenhower. Then there is our chairman emeritus, Rocco Siciliano, another World War II veteran. For over a decade, Rocco led our efforts. He did so with the qualities that made him successful in government and the private sector: integrity and inclusion. When Rocco called me and said it was time to pass the leadership torch and would I agree to succeed him as chairman, I said it would be an honor, but there was a qualification. I called another World War II vet, a great American who fought for our country on the battlefield, in the House of Representatives, in the Senate, and on the campaign trail as our Republican nominee for president. Another really great Kansan, Bob Dole, who also played a key role in making the World War II Memorial a reality. I said, Bob, I can't do this without you. And as he has always done when his country called, he said, Pat, Ike is my hero. I'm in. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure we would be standing here today without the support of Bob Dole, who stepped in as finance chairman of the memorial. He called all the former presidents and vice presidents and asked them to come on board, and not one of them said no. We were hoping Bob could join us today, but please join me in thanking him for his lifelong commitment and service to our nation and to this project. Bob, thank you. And I know we would not be standing here today without the support and the vision of the Eisenhower family. Their commitment to making sure this memorial appropriately captured their grandfather as both general and president has ensured generations of Americans will know his legacy. I think you're supposed to clap here, folks. Every time I stop, you clap. Got it? Okay, here we go. Being an Eisenhower fan is something of a tradition in the Roberts family. In 1952, when I was just 15 years old, I was with my dad, Wes Roberts, at the Republican National Convention in Chicago, and I watched Ike receive the nomination, hard fought, on the first ballot to be our party's candidate for President of the United States. Quite an experience. Later, during his inauguration, I met President Eisenhower. When he entered the room, whether you immediately saw him or not, everyone knew it. With that ruddy face and great smile, he had that special charisma. And when I shook his hand that day, I never dreamed I would be here this day leading the effort for his memorial on the National Mall. After all these years, why do we still like Ike? If he had done nothing else in life, his service as Supreme Allied Commander, savior of Western democracy, should earn him the respect and admiration of every human being whose life, peace, and prosperity that victory made possible. But it isn't just the magnitude of his service that we revere. It is the manner in which he served, the quiet humility, the strength, and the resolve. The man was so humble that upon the surrender of the German army, his message back to Washington simply said, mission accomplished. Ike may not have coined the phrase, speak softly and carry a big stick, but he did embody it. It was not necessary for him to raise his voice or wave his arms to project strength. Those were the tactics of his adversaries. He spoke quietly. He did not make idle threats. Yet when he did speak, the force of his words was clear. The story of Dwight David Eisenhower is the story of America. His ascendancy parallels America's. At the end of the 19th century, Eisenhower was still a young man in Kansas, and America was a young democracy, isolated and protected by two vast oceans. Over the course of his career, America matured both politically and culturally, like that young man who left Abilene, Kansas to go to West Point. By the time Eisenhower retired from public life, the United States was the leader of the free world and at the summit of historic prosperity and peace. It has taken a long time for the historians to discover and figure out Eisenhower's greatness. President Eisenhower anticipated the problems and averted them before they ever became a crisis. His steady hand, his quiet strategy, didn't draw attention like the administrations that followed him. Now, 6 decades later, for that kind of unique leadership, he is considered one of our greatest presidents, which is why we are here today. Like Lincoln, he came from very humble origins. He never forgot the hometown that made him and famously said, "The proudest thing I can claim is that I am from Abilene." He saw the promise that America holds for everyone and the reciprocal responsibility to serve the country that offered him so much. Ike's values were America's values: strength, humility, discipline, integrity. Now we live in an era where it can seem those things no longer matter. But they do. We wouldn't be where we are today without them. We are here today to ensure Ike's place in American and world history for his achievements both as Supreme Allied Commander of Europe and as the 34th President of the United States. When asked about his legacy, Eisenhower responded, and I quote, "The United States never lost a soldier or a foot of ground in my administration. We kept the peace. People ask how it happened. By God, it didn't just happen, I'll tell you that." End of quote. We build this memorial today not only to honor a single person, but as a symbol for all generations of the greatness of America and what our values have made possible at home and abroad. Lest anyone forget what can be achieved in the land of the free and the home of the brave, let them come here and understand what Eisenhower and America have done and what they in turn can do for themselves and our nation's future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. President Eisenhower's West Point class, the class of 1915, was known as the class the stars fell on. That's because over 1/3 of the class became generals, many distinguishing themselves in World War I and World War II. Our next speaker is a West Point superstar of today. Like Ike and so many others before her, Simone Askew decided to seek her education at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. Currently in her final year at West Point, she is the highly esteemed first captain of the Corps of Cadets. The first captain, well, she's responsible for the overall performance of the 4,000 cadets at West Point. And she is a liaison between the Corps of Cadets and the West Point leadership. In addition, she does find time to complete her own studies and serve on the crew team. For you Virginians in the room, Simone is a hometown gal, graduate of Fairfax High School's class of 2014, and I have met her, and I assure you, you have every right to brag about that she's from Fairfax. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming a young woman who undoubtedly is one of the stars of tomorrow. First Captain, Captain Simone Askew.
Not too sure about Superstar Man, but we'll see what the future has in store for me. Thank you very much for that introduction. I want to say good morning to you all and state that it is really an honor and very humbling to be here today, not only to speak, but also to represent the 4,400 members of the Corps of Cadets, as well as the staff and faculty of the United States Military Academy at West Point, as we honor one of the most distinguished graduates of our long gray line. As aforementioned, the West Point class of 1915 is most referred to as the class the stars fell on, as nearly 40% of the class's 164 graduates attained the rank of general officer. Most of the class include notable leaders such as 5-star generals of the Army, Omar Bradley, as well as the young cadet from Abilene, Kansas, young Dwight D. Eisenhower. When General Eisenhower and his classmates received their commissions as Army officers on that June day more than a century ago, they had no idea what history would have in store for them or what history would really demand of them. And yet they rose to the challenge, answered the nation's call, and served when we needed them most. Since then, generations of West Point graduates have assumed the mantle of leadership within our Army, our armed forces, and our nation, serving and leading around the globe in places such as Vietnam, Panama, Bosnia, and most recently, Iraq and Afghanistan. My classmates and I grew up in a nation of war, and when we chose to come to West Point, we knew that we would enter the Army as officers in a nation still at war. Like the generations who came before us, we did not know for sure what would be demanded of us or where we would be taken, but we can say with certainty that we are ready. We are ready because of the example and inspiration of those like General Eisenhower who came before us, upon whose shoulders today and future generations of West Point leaders now stand. We are grateful to General Eisenhower and the members of the greatest generation for their legacy of duty and selfless service to country, and we are grateful for the inspiration that they have given this generation. We proudly and happily commit ourselves to continuing that legacy so that future generations may be inspired by their example. General, President, and above all, a leader of character, Dwight D. Eisenhower's life and career were dedicated to the values of his alma mater, duty, honor, and country. On behalf of the Corps Cadets at West Point, the men and women who serve there, as well as the tens of thousands of graduates who make up the long gray line, this memorial will serve as a reminder of General Eisenhower's life and legacy and inspire future generations for many years to come. I would like to thank you all for this privilege to speak to you today and remind you, go Army, beat Navy.
When Ike and Mamie, if the family will permit us to be so informal in describing the former president and first lady, married in 1916, they could not have imagined the life that awaited them after the many decades of their marriage. One of their greatest legacies has been the remarkably accomplished family. Today, 3 generations of Eisenhowers represent a cross-section of 21st century America that would astonish Ike and Mamie and make them immensely proud. Professors and policymakers, philanthropists, artists, actors, leaders of NGOs, government officials, and so much more. One of them is our next speaker, Susan Eisenhower. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a very warm welcome to Susan Eisenhower, representing the Eisenhower family on this very special day for the family and for the rest of us.
Greta, thank you very much for that charming introduction. This is a very emotional day for the Eisenhower family, I have to tell you that. I think growing up as a child, I never would have imagined this honor would have been bestowed on my grandfather, and I'm sure my siblings feel the same way. Thank you, our previous speakers, for the most eloquent description of the reason we are honoring this man today. Let me say that it's a personal pleasure, and I appreciate enormously the honor to stand here to express the thanks of the Eisenhower family for the conception and the realization of the memorial to Dwight D. Eisenhower in Washington, D.C. Today's ceremony represents many, many years of hard work on everyone's part. There are so many people to thank, from our many friends on both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue to the countless numbers of them across America. Given the shortness of time, I shall just mention a few. It is with gratitude but also sadness that our 2 visionaries, Senator Dan Inouye and Ted Stevens, and also Rocco Siciliano, are not here with us today. But we are grateful to them for initiating and guiding the development of this memorial. We'd also like to recognize the dedicated efforts of Senator Pat Roberts and Senator Bob Dole. Honestly, Senator Roberts, this would not have happened without you. I'd also like to offer special appreciation to Secretary James Baker for his indispensable contribution in bringing us to this point. Finally, I would like to thank Frank Gehry and his team for their professionalism, for their hard work, and their flexibility in creating this striking memorial that will be placed at this spot. To many, it seems we've traveled a long road to get to this point, and yet, believe it or not, by historic standards, we've arrived here all in good time. The FDR Memorial took 43 years, so I'd say we're way ahead of the timeline. This has been possible because of the strong commitment of the project's advocates and a belief that we have a responsibility to give this memorial resonance and meaning to rising and future generations. This must be done as we seek to make a statement about who we are today and what we still believe in as a country. The tapestry, the backdrop of the memorial itself, will now illustrate the beaches of Normandy in peacetime, a fitting image that captures the transformational era during which Dwight Eisenhower led our Allied forces in Europe during World War II and later during the Cold War. Normandy is an iconic spot that forever symbolizes sacrifice, but also liberation and freedom. It is hallowed ground, which reminds us not only of the bravery and valor of those who served, but also of Dwight Eisenhower's leadership. D-Day was a risky operation and one that came as the stakes in Europe were growing perilously by the day. The success of it, as well as our ultimate victory, depended on millions of men and women who followed. For servicemen, not just from the United States, but from more than a dozen countries, including the many courageous people who fought in the underground. Under Dwight Eisenhower's Supreme Allied Command, the outcome, the end of the war in Europe, was monumental, even if the cost in lives and treasures can never be replaced or forgotten. At a victory celebration and a presentation of honorary citizenship of London at the Guildhall on June 12, 1945, Eisenhower stood before a sea of faces as millions of cheering Londoners poured the streets to honor him. Without a note, he delivered his acceptance speech. Quote, "Humility must always be the portion of any man who receives acclaim earned in the blood of his followers and the sacrifices of his friends," he said. Less than 10 years later, in 1952, Ike won the presidency in a landslide victory. During his 8 years in the White House, he led the country along a path of what he called the middle way, one marked by extraordinary cooperation he fostered between White House and Congress, especially during the 6 years both branches of government were held by rival parties. His administration's accomplishments were many. Senator Roberts articulated so many of them today, from the building of the interstate highway system and balancing the budget numerous times, to advancing major milestones in civil rights that established key judicial precedents, including the appointments of federal judgeships that led the groundwork for much of this country's later progress in civil rights. Eisenhower was committed to building a middle class in this country, a bulwark of political stability from which America's new role in the world could be advanced and sustained. In foreign policy, Eisenhower strengthened NATO, an alliance he had served as first Allied commander, and he brought the end of the Korean War. During the next 7 years of his presidency, he employed sound crisis management to avert the loss of any further American combat troops. At the same time, he stood for freedom without losing an inch of territory while deftly containing the Soviet Union and managing the nuclear threat. My family and I can think of no better legacy for Dwight Eisenhower than to have this memorial serve as a reminder of the simple virtues he espoused, of patriotism, humility, fairness, service to our fellow citizens, as well as sacrifice in the cause of advancing peace and prosperity at home and abroad. My family and I hope that the National Dwight D. Eisenhower Presidential Memorial will serve to celebrate not just Ike's life, but also those American values that under his leadership made our country, in war and peace, a beacon of hope for the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Susan, thank you for your support of the memorial to your grandfather. and of course to our president. And now we have a special treat straight from Ike's hometown of Abilene, Kansas. Emma and Annie Brathurst, ages 17 and 15, are farm kids from Abilene, Kansas. They're involved in sports, marching band, and the 4-H. And they attended Ike's alma mater, Abilene High School. And during grade school, Emma and Annie volunteered at the Eisenhower Presidential Library and Boyhood Home, participating in having a history project in which they portrayed Ike's younger brothers. Did I mention Emma and Annie like to sing? Oh boy, they sure do. In fact, they've been singing together all their lives, and they've come all the way from Abilene, Kansas to Washington to sing just for us. Ladies and gentlemen, my great pleasure to introduce to you Emma and Annie.
Coming back to our great American home. I want to thank the Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, for joining us this afternoon. He has been so terrific in so many ways, and I will tell you he's working very hard on tax cuts, in fact, so hard that I'm surprised to see you here. This must be truly a great company, which it is. You'll be hearing in 2 seconds. For you to be here, because you've been pretty busy today.
I just left the press conference.
You did, and that was a good press conference, too. We're thrilled to welcome Broadcom Limited and its CEO, Hock Tan, to the White House to announce that Broadcom Limited is moving its headquarters from Singapore back to the United States. So I want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's really something great. I appreciate it. Broadcom Limited is a Fortune 100 company, one of the really great companies. They manufacture technology and parts. They employ over 7,500 American workers in many states across our country. We're looking forward to seeing that number grow very substantially, which it's now anticipated to do. Their move back to the United States and to the United States is something very, very special and very important. And you've been seeing this happen with numerous companies and at a minimum expansions and sometimes plants. With this commitment, more than $20 billion in annual revenue will come back to our cities, towns, and the American workers. Today, we're joined by some of the incredible men and women from their manufacturing plant in the great state of Pennsylvania. That's a state I like very much. You know? I love Pennsylvania. I went to school in Pennsylvania. You're skilled at your craft, you take pride in your job, and because of you, our nation's trademark, Made in the USA, is respected all over the world once again. And we're telling people, Made in the USA, it's a big deal now. We're bringing it back. When I was growing up, when I was a young boy, you'd say, Made in the USA, that meant something. Well, it means something again. My administration is working every day to make the United States the most attractive place in the world to do business, so that more and more companies like Broadcom come back to our shores, grow their businesses, and create more and more American jobs, and you see it happening on a daily basis. That's why I've already slashed more unnecessary job-killing regulations than any president in history. That includes their entire term, and I've only been here for about 10 months. And we're not finished yet. Believe me, we're not even close. And that's why we're working to give the American people a giant tax cut for Christmas. We are giving them a big, beautiful Christmas present in the form of a tremendous tax cut. It will be the biggest cut in the history of our country. It'll also be tax reform, and it'll create jobs. Today, the House Ways and Means Committee unveiled a historic tax reform bill that will create tremendous prosperity for our nation. We will provide a massive tax cut for American families. We will make the tax code simpler and fair. It's called simplification. We will restore our competitive edge by reducing business taxes for the first time in more than 30 years. And we will bring back trillions and trillions of dollars that's now parked overseas so that money can be put to work rebuilding the United States of America as opposed to rebuilding other parts of the world. Again, I want to thank Broadcom CEO Hock Tan for joining us today. He's a highly, highly respected man, a great, great executive. The job he's done is an incredible job. But what he's doing is committing to massive amounts of American jobs. When Hock told me about this move, he said, Mr. President, we want to be an American company. We're hearing that all of these days. We're hearing it more and more. We're hearing it, frankly, I'm hearing it every single day. People are coming in at levels that you will be seeing over the next short period of time. You're seeing it in so many ways. You're seeing it when you just look at what's happening with the stock market. And you look at the enthusiasm indexes, which are the highest they've ever been. The business enthusiasm in this country is at record levels. And we're hearing it from everything from tax reform, which is really spearheading it. And yet I think it's really a feeling for a country that people haven't had in a long time. They see what's going on with regulation. They see the tax move, and that's going to happen, and I really believe we'll have it done before Christmas. I consider that to be one of the great Christmas presents. And not just the reform, and not just the tax cuts, but we will be creating jobs like you have rarely seen in this country. So we never get tired of that pledge, because we never tire of returning wealth to our country, jobs to our citizens, and honor to our great American workers. I honor our workers. These are incredible people. They've worked hard. You go back 20 years and essentially they haven't had that salary increase that they should have had. But now you see it, wages are starting to rise. So we're very proud of our country. And Hock, I'd like to have you say a few words. And again, on behalf of not only the folks from Pennsylvania behind me, but all of the United States, I want to thank you very much for choosing us. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Hock. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for having us here. Truly an honor, a rare honor. Before I launch into something else, let me say, my mother could never have imagined that one day her son will be here in the Oval Office in the White House, standing beside the President of the United States. Thank you.
And my mother, too.
You see, back in 1971, I was just an 18-year-old skinny kid growing up in Malaysia, okay? But who had just received an opportunity to enroll in the best engineering school in America, in fact, in the world, MIT. And my parents could not have afforded to send me to college, much less MIT. So it's rather amazing, it's really amazing to me even today, that this great American educational institution took a chance on me, sight unseen, gave me a scholarship to pursue the American dream. So my appearance here today, in large part, has been inspired by my desire to give back to this country, which I have received so much from. I run Broadcom today, and Broadcom is the embodiment of the legacy of innovation of three great American technology leaders: Bell Labs, Hewlett-Packard, and more recently, Broadcom Corporation. But in eras past, when the conditions in this country made it harder for companies to compete in global markets, the intellectual property of these leading companies globalized and moved offshore. But I am American, as are nearly all my direct managers, my board members, and over 90% of my shareholders. So today, we are announcing that we are making America home again. Thank you. Our commitment to re-domicile into the United States is a huge reaffirmation to our shareholders, to the 7,500 employees we have across 24 states in America today, that America is once again the best place to lead a business with a global footprint. Okay. Thanks to you, Mr. President, business conditions have steadily improved. The proposed tax reform package will level the global playing field and allow us to compete effectively in worldwide markets. Our move to domicile into the US will bring in $20 billion of annual revenues into this country. Okay, from this base here in the United States, each year we will invest over $3 billion a year in research and engineering, and another $6 billion a year in manufacturing, creating high-paying tech jobs, similar to the ones held today by my co-workers behind me, who have made the trip down from Pennsylvania to be with us here today. So again, thank you, Mr. President. I look forward to working to create, to achieve the American dream for everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Press. Guys, Press. Thank you, Press. Hey,
Great
guys.
bill. It's a great bill. It's going to be very special, you'll see. We'll be talking about it a little bit later, and I'll see you in a little bit to announce the new head of the Federal Reserve. Thank you.
What about
see you in a little bit.
Sam
Thank you.
What about Sam Slovis?
Glad to be part. This is exciting. Impressive.
Oh, yeah.
We got 90 seconds out. All right, 90 seconds out. That's a lot. 90 seconds. I'm just going to read this. Thank you. Good looking out, boys.
Good afternoon, and thanks to everyone for joining us here at Nats Park today. It's an exciting day for the entire Nationals organization. To get things started, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Nationals President of Baseball Operations and General Manager Mike Rizzo and new manager Dave Martinez.
Thanks, FP. Appreciate it. Well, thanks everybody for coming out, and it's again, as FP said, it's an exciting special day here at Nats Park with the introduction of our new team leader and manager Dave Martinez. I would like to thank the Lerner family for attending today's press conference. It's always great to see them in the audience, and thanks to all the media for coming out. It's really an honor and a pleasure to introduce Dave to the Washington media, because he's been a guy that we've thought about and I've known for a long time, and have really admired the way he goes about his business, the way he handles players, the way he treats people, and not only his baseball acumen, but the way he has such a creative mind and employs different types of ideas and information and puts them into a winning environment. This is the man who had a lot to do with developing cultures in very, very analytically based and winning organizations, the Tampa Bay Rays and the Chicago Cubs for years, and his resume is impeccable. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the new manager of the Washington Nationals, Dave Martinez. Nicely done.
Thank you. Thank all of you. I appreciate you guys all coming out. I'm sorry that I had to put my pen down that I got that I love already, but I'll wear it again, I'm sure. First and foremost, I want to thank the Lerner family, their extended family, Mike Rizzo, baseball ops, all the people involved that got me here. I'm honored and elated to be a part of the Washington Nationals family. I'm looking forward to my tenure here, and I really, really, really am blessed to be able to work with some of the finest, which I believe one of the better teams in the National League. And I'm looking forward to working with them and being a big part of the 2018 championship season.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Mike. We have microphones circulating on either side of the room. Please raise your hand and wait for the microphone before you ask your question. And please state your name and affiliation before your question. We'll open it up for questions now.
Chelsea Janes, The Washington Post. Welcome.
Thank you.
What have the last maybe few days been like for you, and kind of how much does it mean to finally kind of get this opportunity after, I know, being interviewed many times over the last few years?
It's been overwhelming. I've been on a lot of flights, but I welcome that very much. Like Mike said, I've known Mike for quite a while, and this is a half a dream come true to me to be able to work here with Mike and the Lerner family, and to see what they built. I mean, this is just an ongoing thing that they've started years ago, and to continue in the successes that they've had, and to get to that next level, which is win a world championship here in Washington. I think the one thing I have to say after talking with the Lerner family and Mike, we definitely have something in common, and that's the desire and passion to bring a world championship here to Washington, and we're going to get it done.
Mark.
Mark Zuckerman from MASNsports.com. You were in the unique position of being able to see this team from across the field during the playoffs just a few weeks ago. As you were watching them, what did you see, and what, if anything, did you see that made you think there's something lacking or something that can be improved on to get past that hurdle?
Well, well, first and foremost, as you know, it was not easy. We went to Game 5, and on the other side, I've always had a thing about never quitting, and we preach that every day. It's something that I'll bring here. We'll play till the last pitch of every game. We'll compete every single day, and we'll win as many games. The object is to win as many games as possible, starting from day one. So I think moving forward, this team doesn't lack much. It really doesn't. I think we just got to get over the fact that we're not here just to win a playoff game. We're here to win the World Series.
Jamal.
Hi, Jamal Collier, MLB.com. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Dave, when did you first, you've obviously been a coach and been a player. When did you first have dreams of becoming a manager? And just over the last couple of years, when you've had interviews and not gotten jobs, did you ever feel discouraged or think that this opportunity might not come?
You know, it was a learning process from the beginning. I'll be honest with you. I retired. I played for a lot of years, retired, have 4 beautiful children. Had no, I thought I'd be a good coach, but really didn't know if I wanted to be a coach because of the traveling. Jumped in it. Joe called me up and asked me to help him out in spring training one year. And next thing you know, I became the bench coach a couple years later. And since that moment, in 2008 was my first year, we ended up going to the World Series and losing. Since then, I really had the burning sensation of being considered as a manager one day, and through process and preparation and going through all the interviews, I've learned a lot about myself and my skills, and which led me here to today. And like I said, I appreciate Mike and the Lerner family to see the value that I'll bring to the Washington Nationals.
Dan.
Dave. Over here, Dan Kolko with Masson. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dan.
You worked under a pretty strong manager in Joe Maddon for quite a number of years. What elements that he brought to the table as a manager do you see yourself maybe having now that you're a manager, and how do you maybe envision yourself differing from him in any number of areas, if at all?
Joe and I have been pretty successful together. I really believe that why change something that really works? I am very creative. We shared ideas together. I'll bring a lot of those ideas here. It's a whole different team. It's a whole different perspective here. So there might be a little changes based on our players, but for the most part, we're going to be prepared, stick to the process. I mean, that's the biggest thing that I learned from Joe. It's a long season, and it's all about preparation and sticking to the process.
Howard.
Howard Fendrich with the Associated Press. Welcome
Howard,
to D.C.
You've been around for a while. I know you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. What do you consider the best trait or quality that you bring to managing? What about you will make you a good manager? And is there any sort of area in which you think there's something you stand to learn still as someone who hasn't done that job yet?
Well, the one thing I can tell you that I'm very, I have a lot of high energy, positive energy. I'm not a guy that's going to sit in the manager's office. I'm very hands-on. I love talking to players. I love conversations with players. It's my strong suit. I collaborate a lot with front office, Mike, ownership, to get it right. Look, I meant this sincerely. This is a big family. You know, we're all in this together. We all got to think alike, have the same ideas in order to really be successful. And I plan on bringing that and bringing everybody together as a whole. And like I said, the ultimate goal is to win that championship. I mean, to bring a world title to the city of Washington and the fans who deserve it. I'll be honest with you. When I came here for the playoffs, this place was electric. I mean, even from the opposing side, it was very. My hair stood up to see how the fans were, all the red and all their. Man, I was jacked up about it. So now to be on this side and hope they cheer for me and our team, it's going to be pretty cool.
Barry.
Mike, Barry's for the Washington Post. Hi. What did you know about Davey from the outside prior to this process? And then what did you learn about him sitting down that maybe you didn't know that impressed you?
Well, looking from across the field with Davey for years that I've watched him is first of all, we have one thing in common. Joe is my manager too, so I know Joe very well. I know how he treats people. I know how he's got an infectious kind of a personality. But seeing Davey from across the field, knowing him as well as I did, just the way he interacted with the players, the way he cared about people, to me, what he brings to the table is he's a perfect blend of the old school 16-year veteran that grinded out a 16-year successful career in the big leagues and a creative, analytically minded a person that can put both of them together and really have the best of both worlds. So that you talk about creating cultures in both in Tampa and in Chicago, where they were very, very successful, and he was a big part of that. Talking with Joe and Theo, who could not have spoken more highly of this person right here. It was great information. We talked to him 4 years ago, and we didn't give him the job, and this time he was. And I told this to Davey when we talked to him the second time. I flew to Tampa, and we had a great day together in Tampa. And I told him, I said, in my humble opinion, you're much more prepared to be the manager right now than you were 4 years ago. A World Series championship under ring on his finger, deep into the playoffs each of the last 3 years, taking a greater leadership role each and every time that I was around the Chicago Cubs and seeing how he handled things there. Taking his communication skills to another level. Now it's not this young up and coming team. You're talking about having to deal with stars, the Bryants, the Rizzos, and the Lackeys and the Lesters. So he's got that. And I think the most impressive thing about it is I've been doing this a long time. I know a lot of people, and couldn't find one person to say a negative word about his character. And to me, that was what it was all about.
Charlie.
Davey, Charlie Slows, Nationals Radio. Davey, Mike mentioned 16 years that you played for 9 teams, the Cubs twice, and I was counting them up. Over those 9 teams had 16 different managers that you played for, even a rookie manager with the Giants who won 103 games in 1993. I know the game's changed, and Mike mentioned some of the things now with analytics and whatnot. What do you take from the different managers, different types that you played for over the years that maybe you bring to the table now?
By the way, I've known Charlie for a long time, so hi, Charlie. We go way back. The one thing that that I've known and that I've learned from the best managers, it's to stay positive. I mean, that's for me. That's the key. Not every day we're going to be successful on the field, but we got to figure out ways how to stay positive and move on to the next day. I play for Bobby Cox. I play for Dusty. Those guys taught me that, hey, there's always another day. You know, after 15, 20 minutes, you know, I did something in Tampa when we were there, and I told the guys after 15, 20 minutes after a loss, I want the music on. You know, we're going to forget about it. We're not going to dwell on it anymore. We'll move on. We got another game tomorrow, and they loved it. And they bought in, and it was done. We ate together for the most part after the game, and it was over. And we came back ready to play the next day. So I think positivity, a lot of energy. Let them know that we care, even when they have a bad game, when they have a good game. Let them know that we always care about them. You'll get the most out of each player.
Chelsea, from the Post again. You've obviously been in a position as a veteran player with a rookie manager, had to kind of get won over by him. What are the challenges of maybe kind of winning over a really veteran clubhouse like the one you'll have here, and how do you do that?
It's building relationships, communicating, trust. You know, those are the three things that I kind of instill myself with. You know, let them know that I'm on their side. This is a partnership between all of us, so they'll know that right away. Like as soon as this day's over, my job is to start getting on the phone and start communicating with all the players. I plan on flying to Arizona and going to Max's event Saturday just to meet with him.
Eddie.
Hey, Dave. Eddie Matz from ESPN. Welcome.
Eddie.
Two questions, actually. First, do you prefer to be called Dave or Davey? I hear both.
It doesn't matter. So when I came up to the big leagues, Davey came about. Harry Carey gave me that name, and it stuck. So.
So you don't care which way we write it?
No, and I don't. It doesn't bother me a bit. I'll answer to both. There's a lot of names that I won't answer to, but those are okay.
Got it. Duly noted. Secondly, the number 4 on your back. Is there a story behind 4?
I wore 14 as a player. I wore 1 as a player. When we signed Price, he wore 14 at Vanderbilt, and so they asked me if I give up my number. Of course I did, but they gave me number 4. The way I look at it is, I have 4 kids, and it's like my 4-leaf clover. So I've been pretty lucky and pretty successful with it. So when it was available, I wanted it.
Jorge?
Dave, Jorge Castillo, Washington Post. Just, working under Joe, he's obviously someone who's kind of been at the forefront of the analytics movement, sort of the data stuff. How do you see yourself incorporating the analytics and data side of baseball?
It's a huge part of the game today. The more information that we can gather, the better prepared we're going to be. So I like to use it a lot. My coaching staff will use it. As far as giving it to players, for me, you got to be awfully careful how much information they get. And I get it. Hey, like Mike said, I got a little bit of old school with a lot of new school. This game is still played on a diamond, on dirt, on grass, with the bat, with the baseball, with the glove. We've done it. These guys have done it since they were little. I do believe in that. But it helps me make decisions like before the game or with lineups and with other things and how we're going to do things. And it's, like I said, it's a big part of the game. Why not use it? I mean, the information's there. We should all use it.
David.
David Driver of Sports Exchange. Hi, Dave. Everybody knows about your relationship with Joe Madden. What about coming up in the minor league system with the Cubs? Who's some of the managers you had? I think the '86 Iowa team, you played with Greg Maddux. Sort of talk about that and how that formulated for you.
Yeah, it was definitely a great I had some really good teachers back then. Jim Snyder, Tony Franklin, Jimmy Pearsall was my outfield instructor. So I learned how to play the game the right way. It's funny that you bring that up because the first time I ever met Joe was in 1983 in the Instructional League. And I was walking across the field. I was 18 years old, and he comes over to me and taps me on the back and says, "Hey, I really like the way you play the game." Now, I didn't know Joe from Adam. I was just looking at him like, "Oh, thanks," And we then developed kind of a friendship every time we saw each other. And in 2006, he calls me up out of the blue. He got the manager job with Tampa and asked me to come teach the game the way that I played it. And I thought that was pretty cool. So obviously I did it for 2 spring trainings. And then in 2007, George Hendricks got hurt, and I took over at first base coaching for him. And apparently the players really liked me to be around. So after that year, I sat with him and Andrew over coffee at Starbucks for about an hour and a half. And I told him I had to leave. And Andrew says, "Congratulations, you're the new bench coach." And I was like, "What?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I got to think about it." And he said, "No." And so I said, "Okay, I'm in." So, and that's how this all came about.
In the back.
Dave, Moisés Linares de Telemundo Washington, bienvenidos a la capital del país. Háblanos un poco de lo que significa ser uno más, un latino más en esta liga donde no hay tantos managers y lo que significa venir a un equipo como Washington que ha hecho cosas muy buenas pero se ha quedado corto en varias ocasiones.
Is this for me?
Let me translate a little bit.
Thank you.
He asked me, first he welcomed me here to Washington, and then he asked me about being a Latin manager now, and obviously Alex Corrigan, a chance to be managing in Boston, yeah. So it feels great, and it's gratifying. There's a lot of good Latin personnel out in baseball, coaching, in the front office, and it's nice to be recognized. But I really believe that I'm here because of merit, and not because of any race or anything like that. So I'm excited about being here because of, like Mike said, because he feels like I can do the job.
And in the back.
Dave, José Garza para Univisión. Si pudieras dar unas palabritas en español, te lo agradezco, aunque no sean muchas. Te quería preguntar sobre tus años con Joe Maddon y cómo te formaron para este momento, porque esta es una situación única, porque es tu primer trabajo como manager, pero al mismo tiempo ya es un equipo que quiere un campeonato.
Claro que sí. O sea, yo me he ayudado con todas las cosas, como ahora con Emilia, con todas las cosas que un jugador que no sabía de la oficina y todo eso. Y como tú dijiste, aquí ellos quieren ganar. Y es diferente con los otros equipos que hice entrevistas. So, para mí, esto es una situación que fue un sueño, pero un sueño bien grande. So, va a estar bien. O sea, yo, en este momento estoy muy alegre y estoy contento que estoy aquí.
Levy.
Dave, in interview processes that you've been through, I'm sure you're asked, how would you do things in certain situations? How would you run spring training? How would you do this? How would you do that? Over the years, have you come up with basically a Dave Martinez book as to how you would do things? And is that something that you would be implementing?
Well, I was in Tampa, came to Chicago. We implemented a system where I thought, for me, this day and age, it's more about quality than quantity. So we implemented a system where we get a lot done in a short amount of time, and we get guys to get rest and also be able to do the things like more fitness stuff, more workouts, and incorporate that in there. Because the ultimate goal is to make sure that everybody leaves spring training healthy and ready to go. But we don't want to burn anybody out either. It's a long season, you know. So you'll see some different things. Like Sundays, I call it Sunday Fun Day. Well, we'll show up a little later. We might have a team family breakfast in the mornings and just have the kids out, let them run around for a little bit, and do kind of different things like that. Because I really believe that as much as we are away from our families, it's good to do some things with them during the course of a season. So we'll implement a lot of that stuff and make it fun for everybody.
Dave, Craig Heiss from 106.7 The Fan here in D.C. Welcome. Can you address a little bit about the pressures that are on a major league manager nowadays? I mean, this is a team you're taking over that's gone to the division series for the last 6 years and has yet to get through that first round. And we've seen with Joe Girardi and John Farrell and, you know, some others, when the success hasn't been achieved to winning it all. How do you plan on taking that next step or taking this team to the next step?
First and foremost, I never let the pressure to exceed the pleasures of the game. So for me, it's just keeping it fun, staying in the moment. In the high leverage situations, try to teach the players how to slow everything down. The game kind of gets quick in moments. And as a bench coach and as a manager, I'll try to really emphasize on just slowing everything down. Just let the game come to you. We've done it. You know, you guys have done it all year long. It's no different. The ultimate goal, like my message from here on out, is to play the last game of the World Series and win. And that's all we're going to concentrate on. That's all we're going to worry about. And how do we do that? By winning one more game each day.
In the back.
Hey, Dave, over here in the back. Winston Hilton, Swag Media. Looking at the roster as it is, I'm sure that you're pretty excited to talk to a lot of the players, but who are you, first off, who are you most excited to talk to and maybe get in depth baseball-wise?
You know, I'm actually excited to talk to all of them. I mean, for me, there's 25 guys on the roster. I utilize all 25 guys. The 25th man, you know, has an important job. He's going to be put in a moment where he has a chance to help us win an important game. So every guy on that roster is important to me. So I can't wait to talk to all of them and pick their brains and see what they're thinking and see how we can improve every daily, you know, situation of that we go throughout the day. I talked to Doolittle. He showed up today, and I talked to him for about 15 minutes, and we had a great conversation. And I love some of the things that he was telling me. So, you know, I'll remember some of those things moving forward. I told him I'll probably call him again in a couple of weeks. And if we're ever in the same state together during the winter, you know, we'll hang out, grab some dinner or some lunch or something. But I'm definitely about communicating and building relationships with all the guys, and I'm looking forward to that.
And Jamal with the last question.
Jamal Collier again, MLB.com. It's kind of for both of you guys, but just for the coaching staff and how you kind of plan on filling that out. Do you think it's important, since you're a first-time manager, to have kind of coaches who have experience with you, or do you want to have some guys that you know have met throughout the years, or you can mixture of both, or how do you kind of plan on that process going?
Want to answer that?
All right, we're going to attack it like we attack everything. It's going to be a group decision, and Davey's got to be comfortable with the guys around him. We're going to put people in positions that to aid Davey in winning baseball games, and there's not a shortage of candidates who want to be with the Washington Nationals. We've received a lot of phone calls. We've got a lot of interest because it's a good team, it's a good franchise, it's a good organization, and with a good young manager like Davey, there's plenty of people who want to be here.
Okay, thank you. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Mike Rizzo will now meet with the print media off to the side in front of the backdrop. Thanks again, everyone.
So pretty cool, guys. Press conference there inside the locker room. I'm Molly Nevola here in the studio with Terrence. Come and join me for some sports talk. This was neat to see Dave Martinez being announced as the new manager of the Nats. Pretty awesome. Yes. There's Brody. If you guys can see the Brody Logan, our sports reporter right there in the tie. So he's in the back. He actually has a really cool one-on-one with Dave Martinez after this. So he saved his questions for that. He'll be having more on that tonight and more of his report for that story. So cool event for him to go to today. That's a live look inside, and you saw FP Santangelo from Masson announce the two, and there we go. Our camera goes down, so we'll come back in and talk about this a little bit. This is exciting for the Nats, right?
This is very exciting for the Nats. So
Dave Martinez, yeah.
Dave Martinez. After the Nats, I guess they didn't renew Dusty Baker's contract, managerial contract. So yeah, they're moving forward. Dave Martinez.
Interesting guy. He's played for multiple teams.
He's played for multiple teams in his tenure as a player. I think this is his first managing gig. His first official managing gig. on the
I
team.
think so too.
'Cause
And yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say Andy has 4 kids, which is astounding.
4 kids.
You mentioned that a
wow.
few times.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting, right?
Yeah.
Family man.
Last year he was a part of the Chicago Cubs, which won the 2016 World Series. So we have some World Series experience
That's
now.
right.
Onto the
That's
team.
huge.
So the Nationals are gonna definitely. Hopefully, I hope they can make it past round 1.
I know it's tough with Washington sports. He, as you guys heard, if you watched some of the press conference, he was, he had a nice line in there about, I'm not here just to win
he's here
season
by
games.
merit.
I'm here to win, to go to the World Series and win the World Series.
Yes,
so
exactly.
here by merit. Right. He had a few good clips there, and it'll be cool to see what Brody gets from him on their one-on-one, their special interview. But
I think he's. I feel like it's going to take him maybe a year or 2 to actually get us there to the World Series, but I feel like we're closer than ever now.
Yeah.
With him on the team.
And
he's. Go ahead.
No, go.
Oh no, I was just saying. I think this is a excellent move.
Yeah.
Nationals. This is a good look for us.
Also, let's talk about quickly. Hey, Wayne.
What's up, y'all? What's up,
Delivering
Wayne?
the mail. Little mail coming down. You guys get an inside peek at our newsroom, the hustle and bustle of the afternoon hours. There was a cool stat about him being a Latino manager.
He is the 3rd Latino.
Manager?
In a manager position in the entire MLB. He's
that's amazing.
joined
That's
along
huge.
with yesterday's champs, Houston Astros. They also have a Latino manager, I believe, and the Chicago White Sox
Have the other Latino.
Yeah, but you have to double check on my.
Don't hold him to that.
Yeah, don't hold me to that.
Brody will probably include that in it because it's an interesting time for Washington to revamp, and everyone's getting excited for next year after this year, and it's hard for Washington sports, but
This is definitely a good look.
It's a good move.
I'm very happy.
Good.
With what the Nationals are doing.
Yeah. Always a fun season.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the next. Let's talk quickly. World Series last night. Did you catch Game 7?
Series yesterday, yes. It was one heck of a game, man. I was definitely rooting for Houston Astros, especially through all the hardships that they went through this year with the hurricane. And
I think that was a special moment.
They worked hard. The final score was 5-1. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, it wasn't as thrilling. People were saying as a Game 7 could have been or maybe should be, but
But the games leading up to it were definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Those were definitely.
It was sort of like
watch.
Points on points, one team. Yeah, definitely a really interesting series, but Game 7 kind of proving to be a little bit more lackluster as far as the excitement. But then Astros came out on top, so World Series is done, and we go head first into the continuation of football season, which is exciting.
World Series is done, but also the All-Star game.
Oh,
next
yeah.
year is at Nationals Park.
That's
in
right.
DC
Wait,
year.
is that in? When is that?
All-Star is in
next.
October. No, I'm sorry. Is it?
No, because. No, it's going to be. Who knows, guys? If you're on our stream and I'm going to look it up right now because I don't want to get this wrong.
Yeah. But yeah, they're coming to DC.
2018, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. And they're it's in July. I thought it was summer.
July.
Yeah, so people I think have already gotten their tickets. Is that right? You had to kind of get on the list to do it.
Yes.
And it's going to be on Fox too. So it's next July 17th. It's going to be the 89th Major League Baseball All-Star Game here. I do remember they made an announcement and people started to snag them up and were like, this is going to be a cool event. It's rare. So I don't know the deal with that, but I think.
And I think the 2018 season starts in late March. So, no more baseball for a few months. Now it's just football. And
which is so exciting.
Football
is my favorite season.
Basketball.
Tonight we got Thursday night game. It's New York. It's New York versus New York Jets.
Buffalo. Yes, New York Jets versus Buffalo Bills.
In.
I think they're playing. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So we continue with football season, which is super exciting.
Super exciting.
I'm going to a couple games myself.
Cowboys versus Chiefs on Sunday. My team will be playing without Ezekiel Elliott.
Oh yeah.
The earliest he can. I guess the court will take him into consideration is Tuesday. So clearly he's going to have to miss Sunday's game. And who knows what happens after that. But he'll be suspended for one game, 1 out of 6.
My team has a bye week next week, Patriots. So I'm having a rest day. Maybe I'll chill and do some other stuff.
Who do the Redskins play? The Redskins.
Oh yeah, let's check it out. We'll have Tailgate Ted probably on to talk about it.
Oh yeah, Tailgate Ted will be here. Are they on a? I thought they were on a bye. They play Seahawks.
Oh, they do.
Yes, at Seahawks.
At Seahawks.
It's gonna be a tough game.
4:05 game. Cool.
Yeah. So.
Well, that was neat. It was good to have some sports on the show. Let's check out that announcement, and then we'll look forward to hearing from Brody for more.
Oh yeah.
On what he gets to talk to him, if he has something special to ask him. That'll be nice.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Shout out to Dave Martinez. Welcome. Welcome
Yeah,
to DC.
welcome to the Nats. We're excited.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think, guys, in the comments, and let us know what you're thinking about today. If you have any questions or comments, just chat with us. We'll engage you. And T, you're going to be around?
I'll be around. Busy day today.
Yeah?
It's Thirsty Thursday.
Crazy with the repairs going on?
Yeah, repairs, upgrades.
Oh, God.
We're doing a bunch of swaps, you know.
Lots of stuff.
iPhone X coming out soon. I hope you guys pre-ordered. I'm gonna get the 8.
You are going to get the 8? You already pre-ordered it?
I didn't pre-order it yet, but...
8, you think is better for your money, or...?
I think I just don't want the face.
It's bigger.
It's too soon for that.
Well,
in my opinion, the whole face unlock.
Oh, but I thought that wasn't mandatory. I thought it was an option.
It's an option.
Okay.
I think
I have it on my phone.
You
the 8.
on the S8.
You can do it.
Wow. See,
yeah.
See, I told you, Apple likes to
compete.
They're the latecomers, man.
Interesting about the iPhone X too. It requires separate earbuds, separate thing. You have to buy them, or you have to make sure you use the ones that it comes with. You can't use the other ones. I heard the jack is different.
What if you lose it?
And some other stuff. There's no internal storage that you can get more. You have to just upgrade to the bigger size. There's a few interesting kind of tweaks with you get pros and cons with everything. So anyway, that comes out Friday. That's making some news. And
Bitcoin is at 7 stacks, 7K.
Bitcoin guy over here. Quick live look inside the White House press briefing room, guys. That's what is on our stream right now. I'm not sure if that's going to come up on time, so we're going to kind of come away from that. And I'm actually going to play out the New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio's announcement from this morning. He provided some updates on the terror attack in New York this morning, just so you guys can stay aware of that, and we can circle back to that. So we'll finish out the show with that press conference, guys, and then we'll be back tomorrow again for another stream. Tomorrow, really cool, our morning show gets to go on their last college tour, Georgetown University. So we'll be watching some of that. If you join us in the morning, we'll be watching that from afar, but our anchors will be tossing to them. So they'll be right in our backyard at Georgetown University, which is cool, to finish up that Friday night kind of, or Friday day rather, good day, or morning show kind of a field trip, if you will. So
Go Hoyas.
Yeah, that's tomorrow. All right, guys, with that, thanks for joining us for the stream and for checking out the Nats new manager. That was an exciting part of the day. I was glad to be able to bring that live from our photog, Nelson, who's there. So we're going to play out these updates on the terror attack investigation in New York to keep you aware of that, and then we'll close it out from there. All right, thanks for joining us, guys. Let us know what you think.
Union leadership that we met with. Chancellor and I spent time with the school leadership, teachers, guidance counselors, including one teacher who was injured in the attack, who happened to be on the bike path and went back to work at the school the very next day, to his great credit. The guidance counselors, the parent coordinator, we listened to them talk about what the students had been through, what parents had been through, what they were feeling, what the whole staff was feeling. And then we spoke with a group of students. And it was very, very moving. We've talked a lot the last couple of days about the strength and resiliency of New Yorkers. It was on display here powerfully. One of the students told me that in the hours they were on lockdown, everyone was checking on each other to make sure they were okay, supporting each other. The students of all backgrounds, every nationality, every faith, standing up for each other, making sure that everyone knew they would get through it. And the students I met with said they had great faith that the adults in the building, all the folks who were there to protect them, were doing that. But he said as the incident finally was over and then students talked to each other and emailed each other about the next day, that they thought it was important to be at school the next day to mourn those who had been lost, and to show that terror would not stop us, would not change us. I think it's an amazing thing to hear kids still in their teens thinking about their responsibility to respond to an act of terror by standing up, by being resolute, and their respect for the lives that were taken, that they saw it as their duty to be back at this school and to send a message. It was very, very moving. And I want to express my appreciation to the whole team at Stuyvesant and the other schools affected. They did things exactly right. We obviously drill for these kind of occasions. We wish we didn't have to, but we understand the world we're living in. And what I heard from the school team was the moment they got the alert, they went into action, they used their training, and they did everything they knew to get kids to safety, to lock down the building, to keep them safe, and to support each other. Obviously a very, very difficult experience for everyone involved, including some who saw the incident unfold. But the message that came through loud and clear here is that everyone had each other's backs. And they knew they had to be there for each other. And no one expressed to us a sense of fear or insecurity. They simply were resolute. And it was very, very admirable. It doesn't mean people aren't feeling things, doesn't mean it wasn't a painful experience. But the solidarity you saw in that building was absolutely amazing. So I just want to commend everyone at the Department of Education, everyone at school safety, but also these teachers and students, just for the way they handled the situation humanly, the way they backed each other up. Something New Yorkers should be proud of. Just a few words in Spanish before I turn to the Chancellor. Estamos en la secundaria Stuyvesant, muy cerca del lugar donde ocurrió el ataque terrorista del martes. Estamos muy orgullosos de los...
Okay, guys, so this was from this morning, Mayor Bill de Blasio giving some remarks, and as he goes into Spanish, we're going to kind of just roll out of this and over to the White House press briefing, which is already in progress from the briefing room. Yeah, we'll go from there. This, again, was this morning, so this is a clip from earlier pre-taped, the latest that we had from the mayor about the New York situation.
Verifiable and permanent denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. President Trump will reiterate the plain fact that North Korea threatens not just our allies South Korea and Japan and the United States. North Korea is a threat to the entire world, so all nations of the world must do more to counter that threat. That is happening, but the President recognizes that we're running out of time and will ask all nations to do more. In particular, the President will continue to call on all responsible nations, especially those with the most influence over North Korea, to isolate the North Korean regime economically and politically, to convince its leaders that the pursuit of nuclear weapons is a dead end and that it is past time to denuclearize. And he will remind friend and foe alike that the United States stands ready to defend itself and our allies, using the full range of our capabilities. The President will also use his trip to promote his vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific region. The President will make the case that respect for freedom of navigation and overflight, the rule of law, sovereignty, freedom from coercion, and private enterprise and open markets is the best model to increase prosperity throughout the region and to secure the freedom and independence of all nations. And of course, increasing prosperity of the American people is always one of President Trump's top priorities. Throughout the trip, the President will stress his commitment to free, fair, and reciprocal trade. He looks forward to working with partners across the Indo-Pacific region to ensure that governments do not unfairly subsidize their industries, discriminate against foreign business, or restrict foreign investment. This will help increase trade, reduce unsustainable deficits, and promote prosperity for the American people and the people of the Indo-Pacific region. A final point, and a point that's often overlooked, this trip, like all the president's engagements with foreign leaders, builds on previous accomplishments and on previous diplomatic efforts. One example I'll provide is that in Riyadh in May, President Trump delivered a historic speech to the leaders of more than 50 Muslim-majority nations. The president will interact with many of those same leaders at APEC or ASEAN, both of those conferences. He will reiterate 3 key U.S. counterterrorism pillars that he unveiled in that speech in Riyadh. First, deny terrorists safe havens and support bases. Second, cut off their funding. And third, discredit their wicked ideology. I think it's time for us to recognize that there's been significant progress on all 3 fronts. Raqqa and Mosul have been liberated and will soon no longer control territory and populations, as the United States has worked very hard with allies and partners to deny that safe haven and support basis, in this case to ISIS. Second, we should recognize that there's been considerable progress on terrorist financing. As you saw Secretary Mnuchin's visit to the region last week, during which he opened a terrorist financing targeting center. And then also, you've heard a lot of leaders across the world, and the president foremost among them, discrediting this ideology, this Islamist or Takfirist or Salafi jihadist ideology. And last week, I think it's worth reading Saudi Crown Prince, the Saudi Crown Prince's speech, during which he called for a return to moderate Islam. At the ASEAN 50th birthday party in Manila, the president will discuss how to strengthen partnerships across the Indo-Pacific to further efforts against transnational terrorist organizations. So this trip is an opportunity to build momentum towards shared prosperity and security, and I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you. We'll take, yes, toward the back there.
General, as you look at the tools in your toolkit for confronting North Korea, how much thought are you giving to putting that country back on the American list of state sponsors of terrorism?
Okay, that is an option that's under consideration, and so the president's cabinet is looking at this as part of the overall strategy on North Korea. But a regime who murders someone in a public airport using nerve agent, and a despotic leader who murders his brother in that manner, I mean, that's clearly an act of terrorism that fits in with a range of other actions. So this is something that's under consideration. And you'll hear more about that soon, I think. Yes, in the front and the center.
Yes. A couple here. Will the president be using the fire and fury rhetoric in his speech about North Korea when he's that close to the border? Will he be meeting with Putin on the sidelines? And will he be bringing up human rights when he meets with Duterte?
Okay, so the president will use whatever language he wants to use, obviously, and what the president has done is clarified in all of his discussions, his statements on North Korea, our determination to ensure that North Korea is unable to threaten our allies and our partners, and certainly the United States. So he's done that with a great deal of clarity in the past, and I'm sure he'll do that during the trip as well. And that's been a great reassurance to our allies, partners, and others in the region who are literally under the gun of this regime.
So we shouldn't expect any modulation in the language because of where he is?
Well, I don't think the president really modulates his language. Have you noticed him do that? I mean, he's been very clear. He's been very clear about it. And let me just talk about this quickly. I've been aware of the discussions about, hey, is this inflammatory? No, what's inflammatory is the North Korean regime and what they're doing to threaten the world. I think there would be a grave danger if that regime didn't understand our resolve, the president's resolve, to counter North Korean aggression, and the president's made it very clear. Yes.
Is there a likelihood during the course of this 12-day trip that additional multilateral sanctions will be announced pertaining to North Korea? And the second question I have has to do with China. In your view, General, are they doing enough to apply pressure on the North Korean government?
So on those questions, what you've seen is a concerted effort to isolate North Korea economically, and that's been combined with a major diplomatic effort that asks all countries to do more. There's tremendous momentum behind that now, and we've seen countries across the Indo-Pacific region, but globally, doing more to expel these really, in effect, North Korean slave laborers who are a big source of income for the regime, to shut down a lot of illicit trafficking that was aimed to circumvent UN sanctions, and then also to shut down a lot of the money-making enterprises of this regime, oftentimes run out of their embassies. So you've seen a lot of expulsion of ambassadors, elements of the diplomatic corps, a restriction on this kind of activity, and the president welcomes that and appreciates it. But we'll also be asking others to do even more there. So it is both diplomacy and sanctions working together. China is definitely doing more. But obviously it's not enough until all of us achieve denuclearization. And I think what's really essential to remember about China's approach to this is China recognizes this isn't the United States or anyone else asking China to do us a favor. China recognizes it is clearly in China's interest, in all nations' interests, to denuclearize the peninsula, and that's because of the direct threat from a regime like this with a nuclear weapon. But it's also because of the specter of the breakdown of the non-proliferation regime. And what if others in the region conclude that they have to arm with nuclear weapons? I mean, that's not good for anybody. So I think China will, as it always does, act in its interests. But I think this is an area where our interests are really clearly aligned.
General, you mentioned in your opening comments that the world is running out of time to deal with North Korea. If you could expand on that for a moment. And earlier this week, before the Senate, General Mattis was asked about the process by which the president might use nuclear weapons. And he said, well, if we were to detect a potential launch from North Korea, that is a scenario under which the president might act. Do you agree with that assessment? Has that been something that has been discussed here within the Situation Room, where options presented to the president?
Okay. All right, so on the first, on out of time, we're out of time because approaches in the past have not delivered on halting and then reversing North Korea's very dangerous nuclear and missile programs. And the approach of the past has been that we'll be happy with something what some people call a freeze for freeze or suspension for suspension. And that's the beginning then of a long drawn-out negotiation process or talks during which the North Korean regime has in the past continued to develop its nuclear capability, continued to develop its weapons. Then upon delivery of a weak, not enforceable agreement, the agreed framework, for example, in 94, what that agreement does is it locks in the status quo as the new normal. And then, of course, North Korea then breaks the agreement and continues with the programs. So we're out of time to do that because of how these programs have advanced over time. So what it's time for is a really concerted effort to do everything all of us can to resolve this short of military action. In terms of scenarios, the president's always very clear. He doesn't draw red lines. He doesn't forecast directly or say directly what he's going to do. But what he'll do is he'll do whatever it takes to protect the American people and our allies.
I only raise that because
overseas. Yeah, and so what is clear is that the United States will respond with all capabilities available to North Korean aggression, and they're appropriate to that scenario.
Something that might be happening.
Gentleman in the center in the back. Yes.
Thank you, General. There have been stories coming out of North Korea and certainly parts of that part of the world that the North Koreans have targeted the president in different ways. And are you confident about his security? And have you heard any of the rumors about the targeting of him by Pyongyang?
Well, whenever the president travels, our team does an assessment and will secure the president. And we have extraordinarily capable forces in the region. And so that's routine for us, is to take all that into consideration.
Yes. How do you assess President Xi now that he has consolidated his power? Does it make it easier to deal with him on North Korea or harder?
Well, I think what the president will do is build on what was already a very strong personal relationship that they developed at Mar-a-Lago, and then also that build on a very substantive policy dialogue we had, especially on the security side, in Mar-a-Lago and in meetings since then at the G20, for example, and in multiple phone calls between President Trump and President Xi. And I would highlight three elements of that foundation for the U.S., Chinese, really the multinational approach to North Korea. The first of these is a recognition that North Korea is not just a threat to the United States. Remember in the old days you'd hear, well, this is really a problem between North Korea and the United States. Well, everyone acknowledges, China especially, that this is a problem between North Korea and the world. The second thing that's really critical is the universal acknowledgement that denuclearization of the peninsula is the only acceptable outcome. No more freeze for freeze, suspension for suspension. And the third thing is China's acknowledgement that it's acting in its interest, obviously, but that China has a great deal of coercive economic power. I mean, 90% of the trade, at least, flows in through China. And so the implementation, enforcement of the UN resolution holds promise, but there's more that can be done beyond that. And I think it's time maybe for nations to do more beyond what even has been called for in UN Security Council resolutions. Yes.
Two questions. One, just to follow up on the previous question. Have you guys determined whether there will be a pull-aside or a formal bilateral meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin during this trip?
No, that's not been determined yet, but we'll announce it if that's determined.
And secondly, I know we're focused on the Asia trip here, but I just wanted to talk for a second about the president weighing in on the man who's been charged with mowing down pedestrians in New York City. He called for the death penalty. Have there been any conversations in the White House about how that could complicate prosecutors' efforts and even help the defense claim that this person can't get a fair trial?
What the president wants is to secure the American people from this threat and from mass murderers like this, and so what he's asked is for options to take a look to assess if our tremendous law enforcement teams and our judicial system has all the tools they need to be able to combat this threat to the American people. So what we owe them now is we owe them options, options to take a look at to see if this is the time to reassess, change our capabilities in this area, in the area of law enforcement in particular. Yes.
Thank you, General. Your opening statement, you spoke about a lot of different freedoms, but I did not hear anything on freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, and self-determination, democratic values. And what I'd like to know is, are these things no longer as important to the United States under President Trump? Is he comfortable with authoritarian regimes consolidating power and moving away from democracy as long as they can help us accomplish larger goals such as North Korea and on any other subject?
So what you'll hear is the president, when he talks about sovereignty, talking about the sovereign nations protecting the rights of their citizens. You heard in just the preview, and you'll hear much more in the speeches and statements the president makes abroad about the importance of adhering to rule of law, to promoting freedom, individual rights. And so this is extremely important to the president. And I think what we ought to do is just look at the president's record. Okay, so in Syria, you have a regime that is a big human rights offender, obviously, in a number of areas. The murder, the torture, the displacement of 6 million people internally, 5 million refugees, mass murder of their own people with chemical weapons. Who stood up against Assad to prevent even further murder of chemical weapons? The president did. I mean, if you look at the policy toward Venezuela, a regime that is consolidating its grip on power and denying their citizens their rights. The president's taken a very strong stance, along with our great Latin American partners, and on Venezuela. So I would just say, look at the actions, right? Look at the Cuba policy. Look at the shift from the old Cuba policy that enabled an autocratic regime and a new Cuba policy which incentivizes human rights and the development of free enterprise, for example, in Cuba.
I've asked you actually in this room several times, because I'll bring it up again because you mentioned Venezuela, that the president and this administration has on many occasions condemned what's going on in Venezuela, but has not done the same thing with other leaders in the Philippines and in Turkey and also in Russia. The president seems to have no problem with some authoritarian regimes, but problems with others. And I'll ask you one more time, why is Venezuela different from Turkey or Russia or the Philippines?
Well, I think what the president's focused on is being effective in advancing and protecting human rights and advancing the rule of law. You've seen him do that in his relationship with we've seen him do it quietly in every relationship. And so how much does it help to yell about these problems? It hasn't really delivered in recent history anyway. And so I don't think that you should assume anything because you're not in the meetings, you're not in the phone calls. And the president has done quite a bit and will continue to do more to advance and protect human rights across all of our relationships.
With the president in the region, is there any concern or expectation that it could cause the North Korean regime to ratchet up their aggression? And are we doing anything proactively to prepare for some sort of acceleration in tensions?
Yeah. Well, the only thing that is ratcheting up North Korea's aggression is the North Korean regime itself. And so, what's important is for us to have the capabilities necessary and to have them in the right locations to deter conflict, and then, if necessary, to be able to respond to North Korean aggression. And we're doing that really with our allies and partners in the region. Primarily our great South Korean allies who live literally under the gun of that regime and have since the armistice in 1953. And so we're working together with our South Korean allies every day to make sure that we have the highest degree of readiness. And of course, you've seen the most recent some of the most recent provocations involving missile launches over Japan, and North Korea poses a great threat to our ally in Japan as well. But as I mentioned, this is a global threat that requires a global response, improving our military readiness, ensuring that we have the right assets, including strategic assets in the region, is immensely important to preventing conflict, and then making sure that we're prepared to respond.
General, there are some foreign policy experts, some intelligence experts who believe that the only route to a negotiated settlement between the United States and North Korea that would have China's support would be a very strong pledge from the United States not to seek regime change in North Korea, and also to remove U.S. forces from the Korean Peninsula and provide other methods for South Korea's defense. Is that something that this White House would even entertain?
Well, we're always assessing our strategies and policies based on the degree to which we think they're effective. Now, right now, we've said that the goal is denuclearization of the peninsula, period. And what you've seen is just the very beginning, maybe the end of the beginning of the president's strategy in the form of new sanctions in place now, much more work to do to isolate the regime diplomatically and economically. And I think we have to be a little patient here for at least a few months to see, what more we and others can do, including China, as some of you mentioned at the beginning. So I don't think we need to reassess our strategy now. I think we have to give it a few months, and then see what adjustments we might need to make. One more. Taking the center back.
Sure. Trade, you've obviously made that a point of this visit. Can you talk about who is going to be leading the U.S. conversations about trade, since we know that Secretary Mnuchin is not going, that we don't have confirmation of whether it's Ivanka or Jared or even the USTR. Can you talk about who's going to be leading those conversations?
Yeah. So certainly our USTR is going to be leading those the discussions on trade. In terms of trade, economic development, economic practices, it'll be our USTR, and then at times it will be reinforced by other members of the president's team. But really, it is the president's trip, so the president is actually going to be leading the discussions on trade and on security, and the rest of us are just there to support really his engagements and to make the most out of the visits as we can. So thanks everybody. Thanks everybody.
Can you stay for a couple others?
Hi, Sarah.
No? Is that it?
right, looks like they're going to end the White House press briefing there, guys. That was General H.R. McMaster, the National Security Advisor, and he walked out with Sarah Sanders. So I guess nothing from Sarah. I'm watching the feed right now to see if we have anything else coming in, but that will do it. That'll wrap it up, guys. Thanks so much for joining us on the digital show. You can continue, of course, to follow us on all our platforms, Fox 5 DC, and we'll continue with coverage on our evening broadcast as well on TV. And then we'll be back tomorrow for more digital coverage at 11:30. So we'll see you then. And yeah, thanks for chatting with us and coming on the stream. We'll be back tomorrow.